Hello, sister travelers. Well, I have another wonderful guest on my show today. I've brought on Polina Ruvinsky. She is the founder of Hype HQ. It's a community where women connect and spread hype about each other's businesses and creative work. But before embarking on this entrepreneurship, Paulina was a leader and software engineer for iconic brands like Disney, ESPN, and Rosetta Stone. But her first love has always been travel. And to date, she has traveled to 43 countries and 19 of them solo. Solo travel has taught Paulina that she is capable of anything. So when she's not traveling or working on Hype HQ, she's mentoring women in tech, running an Airbnb, and mothering her 15-year-old son. So I want you to stay tuned to our conversation today and also note that we will also be highlighting and talking about one of the countries that I listed as a hotspot for 2024 for solo travelers. And we'll be talking a little bit about the country of Colombia. So you want to listen in to the whole conversation. And here we go. Welcome to Solo Travel Adventures for women 50 and older. I'm Cheryl Esch, your host, solo travel advocate, freedom traveler, and coach. This is your passport to adventure. Well, hi, Paulina. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So you have done so much travel, some solo. I want to hear how you found your love for travel. Where did it come from?
I honestly, as far back as I can remember, so I was born in Russia, and it was still back in the days of Soviet Russia. And what that meant was that you were restricted to where we could go. And I remember even as a very young child, realizing that we weren't free to go wherever we wanted. And really, it was only
Mhm.
you could travel to other Eastern Bloc countries. So as a child, we went to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, but we couldn't go any farther. So I think almost having that restriction in my head kind of made me wonder even more, like, what is it like out there in the world, and be even more excited the thought of like seeing it one day. And yeah, and so I think I always had this kind of wonder for it. I've always loved looking at maps and just imagining these faraway places. And I don't know, I mean, this is fascinating. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, is this a something people are born with, or it's something that people tend to develop? I don't know, because for me, it almost feels like, is it part of my physical makeup?
I think your story that you just shared, I think that explains it all, to be honest. I feel like when we are often, and this is just anybody, when you're so restricted, I just think about like when kids grow up in like a really strict home and then they go away to college and then they just like, woo, like
Go wild.
they go wild, right? So I feel like that's sort of that similar feel for you possibly. But I would agree that I think in some people there's this curiosity nature
Yeah,
that I think lends itself to being travelers, to being wanderers, to
yeah,
explore different places. I think if you don't have that, then maybe going to see other countries is not really important to you, right? It doesn't
yeah,
really light you up. So I think that's more of the crux of, I think, what makes people, you know, enjoy, desire to travel. So, and having that story on top of it, everybody's got a different story or different reason to why, they love travel. And so I thank you for sharing that because
yeah.
that's
I
amazing. I would probably feel the same way.
I mean, for me, it's definitely such a curiosity, right? Like, even when I
Yeah.
said I would look at maps, I would think,
Yeah.
what's it like? What do they eat there? How do they
Correct.
speak? And yeah, and then, my family did leave when I was 10 years old. That's when we were able to emigrate to the US. But before we went to the US, we were technically refugees. So we were processed, I guess, like where all our documentation was being done. And we spent 2 weeks in Vienna, and then we ended up spending something like 4 months in Italy. So those
Okay.
things really even more, I was like, wow, here not only are we somewhere where we were forbidden to go before, but also it's so, new and interesting. And for us, you hear these stories for Soviet bloc people where you go into the grocery store and you're just stunned by the variety and all the things that were easily available in the West that were not available to us at all. So anyway, it just even more fueled that sense of like, whoa, this is just a tiny taste of what's out there.
Yes, exactly. So your first outside of Russia and the Eastern Bloc kind of countries, so your first experience outside of that was Italy and Austria, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you got to see some parts of Europe. And then you came to the US after that?
That's right. Yeah. And then we
Okay.
came to the US and we stopped in New York City because that's where my mom's sister already was. She had emigrated several years before. But then we went on to Texas, Houston, Texas, which is where I lived, where I went to school and stuff. But that was, I mean, from St. Petersburg to Houston. I mean, you can
Oh,
imagine
well,
the
I live in Texas, so I can imagine.
and
It's
Houston is not the best part of Texas, I would say.
no, it's like day and night from Russia
Yeah.
to Houston. Houston's just so humid all the time. So
Yeah.
what a
No.
big difference just in weather itself and food and culture. I mean, that's
Oh,
completely different.
everything.
Yeah, everything.
Right. Right, because it was so walkable. When you live in St. Petersburg, you walk. I mean, you take public transport some of the time, but you do so much walking, and that's not at all what you do in
No.
Houston.
Not,
Yeah.
I was talking about that with my kids the other day about what cities in the US are really walkable cities. And the
Mm,
only one that really comes to mind is New York City, where
mhm.
people either walk or they take public transportation. Otherwise, I think Chicago could be one of those as well. But any other place in the US, at least in my opinion, you need a car. It's like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do know some people here in Seattle, that's where I'm based, but who live
In
in
the
the
city.
downtown area
Yeah.
and they don't have cars, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if you live
So,
kind of in the city. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, where was your first solo trip? Where'd you go
Oh,
for your first solo trip?
yeah, so I did a study abroad year in college.
Okay.
So, and this is something, so my son is 15. I'm already starting to work on him. I keep saying, you have to do this. It was honestly the most incredible time in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I went and I studied in Italy, so
Okay.
I was spent
You're back in.
one semester in Florence and one semester in Rome. But and I went there on my own. I was part of a group, but I went when I joined the program. I didn't know anybody. It was and then we did a lot of weekend trips. So my first solo adventures were around Italy, where I would go and for the weekend we go to like Cinque Terre or something like that, which
Mm,
is
yeah.
just having that at your fingers. I mean, oh my God, what an incredible time that
What
was.
an experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
definitely I would definitely encourage all students to do that if they can.
Oh, so much because
Yes.
you don't get, and this is what I tell them, it's not like traveling. Like you get to really be a local somewhere, which is an
Hmm.
opportunity that unless you can get a job abroad somewhere, you really don't get. And it just, I honestly, it was incredible to just, you shop at the little markets and you stop in at your regular place for espresso on the way to school.
Yeah.
It was so amazing. And then in that year, I did a lot of solo trips. I ended up going to Poland solo. I went to Israel solo. I went to Greece solo. And a few things I did with friends that I met in the program, but those were the longer trips where I really, really was, figuring it out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of it. So 19 of those countries, you've been to 43 countries, you said, and 19 of those you've been solo. What
I
during
did
your
the
solo
math
trip?
just for you.
Yeah, I know. I was like so happy. I love numbers.
Sorry,
So
what was the question?
19 solo trips. Um, what has solo travel taught you about yourself?
Oof, yeah, that's really a big one. And I think this is why I have such a passion for it, is it really makes me feel so incredibly capable.
Mm.
Honestly, I start to feel that whatever comes my way, I can figure it out. And to me, that's huge. And I think this is why it feels so addictive to me. And I've also learned how much I really just to like doing things my way, right? I don't want to, I like, sometimes I want to plan, sometimes I want to just wing it. Sometimes, and it's so great to always be on that pace by yourself. And,
Hmm.
but there are other things too. And I know that, a lot of this is something that people think about when they think about solo travel, and there are lonely stretches of it. And so it's kind of, what are the strategies that you can have to make sure that you get, and we all need different levels of socialized, that contact, but what are my strategies to get what I need for that, and how do I get to the point where I'm really comfortable being alone at, it's funny, so many people ask me about dinner, right? You probably hear
Yeah.
this all the time. They're
Yeah.
like, well, who do I eat dinner with? And it's funny that that's such a, but I think that's just representative of that sense of like, okay, how do I feel okay in myself, even when I'm somewhere and I'm not there with anyone else? But yeah, so a lot of my strategies are around, maybe taking like day tours. A lot of times I'll meet people there, and then it's like, oh, let's meet for dinner. So that's
Yeah.
always, that
Yeah.
works for me. And I think just knowing what you need and how to get it is really important.
So you said your solo travel kind of gives you this confidence, and I imagine, as some people say, that you can handle anything, I think is the phrase that you said, right? And how that translates to your everyday life. So when you come back from a trip, does it feel more empowering? And how do you transfer that into your everyday life, I guess?
It does. It does. Honestly, it's one of the things that I think, that's probably like, courage is one of my biggest values. And
Mm.
that's also something that, even we're all hard on ourselves, but that is the one thing that I'm always like, you have courage. And so I really feel that it allows me to take more risks. And so you take risks, you get positive feedback, then you take more risks. So it's kind of like a loop of
Hmm.
that just continues to make you more confident. And I know that it really ties into what I'm doing now, to have to quit my corporate job and go for uh, an entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah,
You really do
yes.
need to have that sense of like, okay, how it's going to be okay, right? I
Hmm.
know I can figure things out because I have so much
Yes.
evidence.
Yes, yeah. I love that. Solo travel, 19 countries was, I know Colombia has been a place that you have gone to,
Mhm.
and that place is actually one of the spots considered a trending hotspot right now. It was ranked high for people where people were going to go in 2024, and you can refer back to my episode 66 on that. But why would you say it's a popular place to go now? What do you think's making it so popular these days? You've been there. Tell us.
Yes. Well, I think it's amazing that it made that list. And, you know, so one thing I want to say, I'm kind of obsessive about safety. I'd be really interested to know if a lot of solo travelers, women, have that. I actually have almost, like, I won't go out at night unless I'm meeting someone that I've already met, that's someone that I
Hmm.
already know.
Yeah.
I literally will never go out solo at night, almost anywhere that I live, that I've traveled to. So the first thing I always check when I'm going, especially in the long one, I was in Colombia for 3 weeks. I think about,
Wow.
okay, what is the am I going to feel safe as a woman, right? Everywhere there's pickpockets, everywhere is this and this, but I want to feel like I don't have extra exposure just as a woman on my own. And I felt really, really safe there. And I know it's funny because there were years, and I know you remember those years where Colombia was, it was
Yeah.
like the drug wars, and
Yeah.
all the movies have been made about it. So it's funny to say I felt so safe there, but I definitely did. And I know exactly why it's a popular destination. It just is such a vibrant culture. I
Mm.
love, like, one of the things I love is street art. And I saw some of the most incredible murals. all over. I was in Medellin, I was in Cartagena, and everywhere there's murals. There's history, but it's also modern. There's great food and there's music everywhere. I mean, I
Yes.
went back to look at it because it's funny. Someone was just asking me for advice on where to go there. Then I went back and looked at my album, and I have these multiple videos of just people dancing in the square, right? Like
I
they'll
love
just be,
it.
yeah, just like salsa merengue, like old people, young people, everyone's just, dancing. And so to me, it's just wonderful. It has incredible beaches. It's not very expensive. So honestly, like it's just, there's so many reasons. Actually, it has incredible, I just listed the cities I went to, but I also went into the coffee region where they have like beautiful hiking and
Yes.
parks. And then, they have National Park, Tayrona National Park, which is just incredible. So there's a lot. It has a lot to offer.
I'm glad you mentioned the safety issue because that was part of that list was, I did make sure that it was safe for solo travelers. So I'm glad you
Mhm.
kind of confirmed that. And I've heard that
Yeah,
from other people and how they love the culture, like you mentioned. But thank you for bringing that all up. I have it on my list to get there. Haven't been there yet, but I've heard a lot of
you'll
people
love
getting
it.
there. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Have there been any other places you've gone that I like to use the word where you experienced a serendipitous uh, sort of event? Maybe you met somebody, or maybe
Mhm.
something you weren't planning happened, right? And it turned out
Mhm.
to be a really good thing, is like how I like to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny that the first thing when you were saying, probably because I'm already thinking about Colombia, is where there were several events like that. There are so many people I met there that I'm still in touch with that I just met on like a little tour. But also, I had this moment when I was traveling in Vietnam where I was in, which another actually very, very safe place. If you don't choke on exhaust or get run over, you're going to be totally safe there. Just get out of the big cities is my advice.
Yes.
But yeah, I was in a place called Hanoi in Vietnam. And it was, as I mentioned, I would go on a tour and I'd meet somebody. I'm like, oh, you're so great. I went on another tour. Oh, you're so great. And then I had this moment where I was like, I know, I want to connect everyone I met from, the Facebook groups I'm in and the tours that I went on and just get them all together. And
Uh-huh.
it was honestly, I had such an incredible moment because I recognize about myself, and I know this more now, is that I get such a rush out of connecting people. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
There's like those people who do human design or whatever, and there's a
Yeah.
connector.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of those people because it was just so great. It ended up being like five of us, and I just remember we were all sitting and having dinner in Vietnam. That always means you're like on a tiny plastic stool, you're sitting there with your bowl. And I just remember looking around and thinking like, hey, I brought all these people together. And when people are connecting and they're vibing together and they're exchanging contact information, I love that.
That's amazing.
That was a
Oh,
wonderful
wow.
memory.
So
Yeah.
it sounds like because of you like to do that. I mean, have you ever considered putting together like a travel tour group, and going somewhere? I don't know.
You know what? I have considered that because it's, sometimes you go and you enjoy an experience so much and you think like, okay, if I just brought people here and here, they would just love it. And
Yeah.
um, but I do think that that's probably I didn't mention this, but I did work as a travel agent for like 3 years.
Okay.
After I graduated from college, I thought, what would be better than to be somewhere where you're always dealing with travel? And it sounded amazing, but you know what? I did not enjoy that job. And so I think it's just kind of a telling moment for me to think I might enjoy doing it, but if I'm doing it for a job, then it becomes this sort of like routine logistics. Everybody's coming to you with their problems, and
Yeah.
then the fun is gone.
Right. I think that's really what ends up being those travel agency jobs end up being. They're more logistics and
Yeah.
I think less about the enjoyment of the moment of when you
Yes.
travel, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I thought, I thought people would all show up in that same spirit of, adventure and curiosity and discovery. But so often people showed up and it was almost this kind of like they were put out or something, so right away they're like, well, I don't know about that price, or like that place better be a nice place, so they
Um,
didn't have that sense of I'm here to just discover, like, let
mhm.
this experience take me and see what happens. It's very much they were trying to kind of control it, which made it put it all on you as the planner to figure it all out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier in our conversation about kind of being a planner, but also maybe doing a little spontaneity in your travels. Um, what do you tend to lean toward? I mean, are you kind of dead in the middle? Do you like some planning and then some spontaneity?
Well, so I'll tell you, it's my perfect part of it is who I'm traveling with. I've
Okay.
learned that because I'm getting ready to go in less than 3 weeks with my son, and he's 15, as I mentioned. So we're going to Ireland and Scotland. And for me, when I'm traveling with him, I want to plan more because I don't want to end up in a place where, like, oh crap, now we're in some hostel and like we can't be in the same room. I don't want to find myself in high season without a place to stay with my son. That's the kind of situation that would really stress
Okay.
me out.
Yeah.
And then also last year, I went to Croatia with a friend, and this is a friend who kind of, she has, I think, maybe higher expectations than me because she was saying it
Mm.
has to have AC and it has to have
Hmm.
this. And so also in that scenario, I do more planning. But my perfect, if I
Yeah. Yeah.
have
Tell me you're
the
perfect.
freedom, my perfect is like book a couple of nights in the beginning, book a couple of nights at the end, and like that's it. In the beginning, literally go with what you meet somebody and they recommend something, or you just are like, okay, well, now I'm sick of the beach. Now I want to hit a city. And then you kind of, what that is my ideal. And when I go by myself and it's a place where I feel comfortable, I think the last time I did this was in Panama. And so I went, had a few nights, and it was like, well, I'm enjoying myself. Maybe I'll stay in Panama City a little bit longer. And then it was like, okay, well, what beaches do I want to go? Oh, do I want the Atlantic side or the
Yeah.
Pacific
Yeah.
side? Exactly. And so that way, my perfect thing is having that sense of freedom. That
Yeah.
sense of freedom just makes me so happy to just know, like, okay, I'm just creating my journey as I go. So that's my perfect
I
happy
agree. That
spot.
sounds like mine because I have often like I've overplanned and
Mhm.
you're staying somewhere, but you've seen another place that maybe is a little more attractive or more your liking, but you've already made the reservation somewhere and you're like,
Yeah,
so I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I obviously will book something, obviously that first day or two that I'm landing somewhere. And then always the last day too. I like to be near the airport,
same.
just to
Yeah.
keep it easy. But anything in between, I just kind of like to wing it.
Exactly, because it's,
Just
as soon as you meet somebody who's already been there for a while, they're going to have recommendations for you.
recommendations.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah,
with you on
and it
all
is
that.
too, yeah, and it's too bad where you're just like, I can't. I've had a couple of places, but it has to be a country that's really cheap where I just abandoned a reservation and did something. So if I'm losing, I don't know, maybe like $100, I'm not going to worry about it so much. But other things, where you've paid like $700, like I'm not forfeiting
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
yeah.
with all the travel that you have done, you have a wealth of experience, and also places you've been. If you had to give one piece of advice to solo travel women, what would it be?
Mm. Yeah, I really want more women to be doing this. And I think this is also similar to advice that I would give someone in, the business side of my life is that, just kind of like take that leap. Like if you have the curiosity, just, there's just that one moment between wanting to do something and actually, you know, pulling the trigger, as they say, and really just going for it. And I just really want, that's my advice, is really just try it. And I think so many women fall in love with solo travel because it's all about us, for a
Hmm.
change. It's all
Yeah.
about us. you get to do exactly what you want and create
Exactly.
exactly the experience that you want. So I really want more women to really take that leap. That's my biggest advice. Just try it.
I love it. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So you mentioned business, and you've also talked a little bit about sort of how you love bringing people together. And I think I'm looking at, your business model and I'm like, that sounds like what she's doing here, right? So, but tell us a little bit more. You created what's called Hype HQ. Tell us about that company, what you do, and what your mission is.
Yeah. I'd love to because when I think back, I skipped all the years in the middle where, I did the study abroad, then I did the travel agency because I was like, oh, maybe I could just travel all the time. Didn't like that. Then I went into high tech, and so another complete and different pivot. So I spent more than 20 years working in a corporate job as a
Hmm.
software engineer and then a manager and director. And it enabled me to be able to do some of this traveling, but also it was so restrictive. There was always this sense of like, oh, well, this is just your vacation time and this is it.
Right.
And during the pandemic, I know so many of us really had to reevaluate
Hmm.
what are we doing? Like, is this really what I want to be doing? If life is really out of control, what do I want to be doing? Where do I want to
Right.
be? What are my values? And so I left that corporate job. I really wanted a different I wanted to create a different impact really for women. So my focus is on women and how do we create more opportunities on women. So Hype HQ, it's a platform and it's a community, and it's all about women hyping each other out in the world in order to create more opportunities for everyone. So there's a couple of different types of members that are
Okay.
really that this works great for. One of them is podcasters, by the way. So,
Okay.
so if you're if you're creating, if you have a YouTube channel, you're a podcaster, you're trying to build a following, this is a place where you can go and you'll say, "Hey, my new episode just dropped. Everyone, can you go listen and rate it and follow or whatever is most useful to you with what you're trying to create?" And so that's really effective. I think others are maybe more building like their personal brand on LinkedIn or something, or they have a small business already that they
Hmm.
just need more eyes and more visibility on. So, yeah, so it's basically the place where it's always okay to ask to be, hyped and
Okay.
amplified and supported. And that's really what it's all about. We as women so often are used to kind of being more modest about, oh, I won't talk about my accomplishments or I'm supposed to be quiet and modest. But this is the place where we want to break out of that and really just, ask for what we want, talk about your accomplishments, have others talk about your accomplishments, and really create more visibility and opportunity for all of us.
I love it.
Yeah,
Yes, we do need more of that.
we
I
really
find
do.
that there's a thing with we women we're wired differently than men, of course, right?
Mm,
But when we step out and start a business, there's a lot of we question ourselves, I think, a
yeah,
lot,
yeah,
and sometimes we have what's called imposter syndrome, where
yes,
we see somebody else doing kind of what we want to be doing and like, oh, I'll just never be like that or whatever. And
yeah,
so I think definitely building communities like you are super important for us women to be supporting one another and
yeah,
not from a jealousy or competitive standpoint, but to
yes.
really, lift lift each other up is what you're doing here actually. So I love the idea. And so where can people join or where can they find it? So if they're interested in checking it out or joining the platform or the community, where can they do that?
Yes, so it's hypehq.io.
Okay.
And please, please do come check it out. Right now, we just launched 2 months ago. And so it's still in its free phase. And we want to hear from people, how is the experience? Are they enjoying it? And then we're trying to just make it better. And so please, please check it out. I read all the email. Please email me if you are stuck or you have suggestions. So yeah, this is like you said, it's so important for us all to support each other because we really do have together the power to do
Mm-hmm.
incredible things.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of, questioning yourself, like, I did that in every stage of my life. You question. And then at some point you're just like, okay, look, you were able to do this. You were able to do this. You were able to do stop questioning. And really, I think that if we all support each other in making more of these, like taking a smaller risk and building our confidence more and more, it's really going to have a cascading effect for women.
Absolutely. And actually, that's how you got here. That's how my last interview, I mean, like through just connections, I've, I have found guests to interview that have been
Yeah.
perfect, just through those connections. So I know it can
Yeah.
happen. And, having that community to help with the networking, the support,
Mhm.
I think that's amazing.
We
Yes.
can give a shout out to our mutual friend, Julie Fenn, who's on her way back
Yay.
to North America, I think, as of
Yes,
today.
I think
So,
so too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the incredible group that we met through, by the way, which I think this is probably when I'm saying, oh, take a leap, women, you don't have to do it alone. There are groups like Host a Sister, solo
Yes,
travel groups on Facebook, which is the best thing about Facebook are these groups. And you'll find so many women that'll encourage you, give you tips, give you information that you can really not feel like you're going by yourself.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you're by yourself and yet you have the support.
Yeah. Yes. Lovely. So I know you mentioned you're going to Ireland, Scotland with your son, but
Mhm.
when is your next solo trip? Or if you haven't planned one, where would it be if you could go to your next solo trip?
Yeah, I'm so itching. It's only because my son is in that age where, he's getting ready to graduate, and I know he's not going to want to keep wanting to travel with mom. So I know I have to capture this moment.
Yep.
But in this last 9 months, I've been so focused on getting Hype HQ off the ground that I've actually canceled 3 solo trips over this last 9 months. So this is the longest that I haven't gone anywhere. So I need to go. I canceled a trip to Cuba that I had in November. I had one to Mexico, just a little jaunt, and
Yeah.
then to Uruguay and Argentina. That's the one I'm really sad about canceling. That I
Oh,
was supposed to go
yeah.
in February. I was so excited to go, but it's just I've been working so hard on this business. So I think when I can reschedule that one, I think that's the one I would
The
love to go
Argentina
back to.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Uruguay and Argentina. I
So,
also really want to check out specifically Montevideo because Uruguay has a really great reputation for, well, definitely safety, all these things, but also
okay.
I think there is kind of starting to be like an expat retirement presence
Okay.
there because yeah, once my son has flown the coop, I already know exactly what I want. I want to split my time between Latin America and the US. And so I'm always checking out places that feel like they have that good vibe where I
That
could
good
live.
vibe and safety factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, keep us posted, keep me posted, and maybe we'll
Yes.
have you back and you can share about some other places you've been to.
Yes.
That would be
And
good.
I'm off to listen to episode 66 because I'm dying to know
So
what the
you can
other.
figure out
Yeah.
what the other ones are. Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
Julie, speaking of Julie Fenn, is going to be representing one of those places. So she'll be on
Oh.
shortly to talk about Queensland. So that is one of the places. And
Oh,
then
okay.
you with
Lovely.
Colombia. So we're making our way through that list,
We're
hopefully.
recovering.
Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you, Paulina. I appreciate your time, and this is wonderful. I'll make sure I include all that information about Hype HQ in the show notes. So if people want to get in touch with you or check out the platform, they can do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was totally fun. And yeah, I'd
Yes,
love to come
absolutely.
back and talk about other
Other
future
places.
trips. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that
I
would be
can talk
awesome.
about travel all day long
I
for sure.
well, we both could probably.
Yeah. Oh, I guess it's no accident that we're
No
here
accent.
talking
Yes.
about travel.
Yes. Well, great. And thank you so much. And you have a great day.
You too.
Hey, sister travelers, did this podcast inspire and encourage you or move you to get out there and travel? Wonderful. There are 3 ways you can thank me. First one is leave a written review for the show on Apple Podcast. 2, share the show with your sister travelers, your friends, your family. And 3, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And thank you again for listening to the show. Sisters, be fearless, take the leap and get out there and have an adventure.